In the stillness of Willow Creek's pre-dawn hours, where the air hung thick with the scent of dew-soaked grass and distant pine, a solitary figure traced the winding road beyond the town's edge. Emma Harper, a 35-year-old single mother, wore sneakers patched with silver duct tape and a faded denim jacket that offered scant protection against the morning's bite. Every day, she walked 15 miles to her job as a janitor at Mercy General Hospital and 15 miles back to her two children, Ethan, aged 11, and Lily, aged 7. Emma never voiced a complaint or sought a handout. Each step was a quiet vow to her children, a pledge to carve a future free from the weight of poverty. Willow Creek was a small, unassuming town nestled in a valley, its streets lined with clapboard homes and weathered storefronts, where neighbors recognized faces but not always the burdens behind them. Emma's house stood on the outskirts, a squat, wooden cottage with a roof that dipped in the middle and windows that rattled with every gust. The peeling green paint hinted at years of neglect, but within its walls lived Ethan and Lily, the twin stars of Emma's universe. Ethan, with his keen intellect and fascination with mechanics, spent hours at the kitchen table, tinkering with scavenged parts and dreaming of becoming an engineer. Lily, a spirited 7-year-old with a mop of curls, filled the cottage with drawings of fantastical worlds and tales of brave explorers. To Emma, they were her reason to rise each day, her drive to push through any hardship. Her mornings began at 4 a.m., when the soft chime of her alarm pierced the silence. She silenced it quickly, careful not to stir Ethan and Lily from their dreams. Slipping into a worn sweater, she tied her dark hair into a loose ponytail and prepared a meager breakfast, 2 slices of day-old bread and a cup of watery tea, the cheapest blend she could afford. She ate alone in the dim kitchen, her gaze drifting to the window where the first hints of dawn painted the sky a faint gray. By 4:30, she stepped outside, locked the door with a key that stuck in the rusty lock, and began her 15-mile journey. The road was a relentless adversary. Her sneakers, threadbare and patched, rubbed blisters into her heels, and on rainy days, water seeped through, chilling her feet until they ached. Her legs throbbed, her shoulders sagged under a faded backpack stuffed with a spare uniform and a sandwich, but Emma pressed on. In her mind's eye were Ethan, hunched over a broken radio he'd vowed to fix, and Lily, taping her latest crayon masterpiece to the fridge door. For them, she whispered, her breath forming faint clouds in the crisp air, a mantra that steadied her resolve. As she passed through Willow Creek, Emma encountered familiar figures. Mrs. Clara Benson, an elderly widow who ran the town's bakery, waved from her shop stoop, her hands dusted with flour from early dough prep. "Morning, Emma. Chilly one today, isn't it?" she'd call, her voice warm as the bread she baked. Emma nodded, forcing a smile even when exhaustion dulled her spirit. Not everyone was as welcoming. In the tidier neighborhood near the town square, where lawns were manicured and porches gleamed, some cast suspicious glances her way. A woman in a pressed coat once clutched her purse tightly as Emma walked by, as if she posed a threat. Emma ignored it, her chin high, her heart sustained by the kindness of those like Clara who saw her as more than her worn clothes. Her old car, a 90s Toyota sedan faded to a dull gray, had broken down over a year ago. It sat in the backyard, rusting under a blanket of leaves and pine needles, a relic of days when it whisked her to work in under 30 minutes. The hum of its engine had once been a small comfort, a promise of reliability. Repairing it was a dream beyond her reach. After paying rent for the cottage, utilities that climbed each month, and groceries to keep Ethan and Lily fed, her wallet was bare. The town's lone bus didn't run early enough for her 6 a.m. shift, and she couldn't risk tardiness. Her job at Mercy General was their anchor, and Emma guarded it with every fiber of her being. At the hospital, Emma was a steady, unassuming presence. She scrubbed linoleum floors until they gleamed, changed linens with crisp precision, and emptied trash cans with a quiet diligence that earned nods from nurses and doctors alike. Despite the dull ache in her legs from the long walk, she greeted colleagues with a tired but genuine smile. "How do you manage that trek every day, Emma?" Jane Riley, a nurse with a soft voice and a knack for knitting, asked once over a shared coffee break. Emma chuckled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "One step at a time, Jane. That's the trick." The real answer remained unspoken. She did it for Ethan and Lily, the heartbeat of her existence. During her lunch break, Emma sat alone in the hospital cafeteria, eating a sandwich of peanut butter on stale bread, packed in a crumpled paper bag. Her phone, an old model with a cracked screen, buzzed with a text from Ethan. "Mom, got the radio working. Love you." Tears pricked her eyes as she typed a reply, her fingers trembling with pride. Her children never complained about their patched jackets, their lack of new toys, or the long walks to school when she couldn't drive them. Their quiet strength, their unspoken trust in her, fueled her determination to keep pushing forward. The afternoon walk home was a grueling test. In summer, the sun blazed, leaving her dizzy and parched. In spring, rain soaked her through, her jacket clinging like a second skin. Yet Emma thought only of the moment she'd reach the cottage, when Ethan and Lily would burst through the door, their laughter washing away the day's toll. Those fleeting minutes, helping Ethan solder wires, listening to Lily's latest tale of a dragon-slaying princess, were her reward, her reason to rise again at dawn. One misty morning in April, as Emma trudged along her familiar path, a police cruiser rolled past, its headlights slicing through the fog. David Lawson, a 41-year-old officer who had served Willow Creek for over a decade, sat behind the wheel. David was a man of routine, proud of knowing most residents, the diner's morning crowd, the kids biking by the park, but Emma was a puzzle. He'd seen her walking countless times, rain or shine, her stride steady yet heavy with an unspoken burden. That morning, something stirred him to act. He pulled over, lowering his window. "Good morning," he called, his tone warm but careful. "You okay? It's early for such a long walk. Need a ride?" Emma startled slightly, her hand tightening on her backpack strap, but she offered a polite smile. "Thank you, I'm fine. I'm used to walking." Her eyes held a guarded flicker, as if accepting help might unravel the fragile thread of her independence. David nodded, not wanting to push, but a question took root. Why does she walk so far, every single day? Over the next few weeks, David began to notice Emma more keenly. Each morning, he'd see her in the pre-dawn gloom, her sneakers nearly falling apart, a faded backpack slung low. In the afternoons, she'd appear again, her steps slower, her shoulders slumped with fatigue, yet still moving with a quiet resolve. One stormy day, as Emma trudged through puddles in a soaked jacket that clung to her frame, David's concern deepened. He followed her from a distance, his cruiser trailing slowly, his gut churning with unease. No one would choose to walk 15 miles a day, in weather like this, unless they had no other choice. One evening, driven by a need to understand, David decided to follow her more closely. He kept his cruiser far enough back to avoid notice, watching as she left the hospital after her shift. She moved steadily, her silhouette sharp against the glow of streetlights, until she turned onto a quiet lane on the town's edge. At the end stood a small wooden cottage, its porch light flickering weakly. Before Emma could reach the door, it burst open, and two children raced out, their voices piercing the dusk. "Mom! You're home!" Emma knelt, wrapping them in her arms, her face transforming from weary to radiant, as if all her pain dissolved in their embrace. David, parked a block away, felt a lump rise in his throat. The pieces fell into place. She didn't walk for herself. She walked for them, her children, her reason to endure. That night, David returned home, his mind consumed by Emma's story. Over a dinner of meatloaf and mashed potatoes, he shared it with his wife, Laura, a librarian with a gentle heart and a love for poetry. She walks 15 miles a day, Laura, no matter what. I saw her with her kids tonight, she lit up like the sun. It's for them, I'm sure of it. Laura studied him, her fork paused mid-air. She sounds like she's carrying a mountain, David. Maybe she needs help but doesn't know how to ask. If you're going to do something, do it with care. Respect what she's built. Laura's words lingered, shaping David's resolve. He didn't want to force help on Emma, but he couldn't stand by while she bore such a load alone. The next morning, he began to act. His first call was to Pete Grayson, owner of Grayson's Auto Repair, a gruff man with a soft spot for hard luck stories. "Pete, you up for a good deed?" David asked, his tone earnest. He described a mother walking 15 miles daily to provide for her family, keeping Emma's name private to honor her dignity. He spoke of her grit, her quiet strength. Pete scratched his beard, his voice rough. "That's a hell of a thing, Dave. Bring me the car. I'll take a look, no charge for labor. Parts on you, though." Encouraged, David reached out further. He called Ellen Carter, who ran the town's shoe store, telling her of a woman whose sneakers were disintegrating from endless miles. "Get me her size, and I'll find something sturdy," Ellen said without hesitation. He spoke to Mr. Thompson, the grocer, who pledged a week's worth of food, plenty of apples for the kids, he added with a chuckle. Slowly, David began weaving a web of support, careful to protect Emma's privacy at every step. At the police station, David shared the idea with his colleagues, framing it as a chance to serve beyond their usual duties. Officer Maria Sanchez, a single mother herself, was moved. "I've seen her on my patrols, David. Never knew her story. Count me in, whatever you need." Even Chief Rodriguez, a stern man with a graying mustache, nodded when David briefed him over a cup of station coffee. "This is what policing should be, Lawson. Helping where it counts. The department's behind you, use what resources you need." David visited Mercy General, speaking quietly with Jane Riley in the hospital's bustling hallway, the clatter of carts and beeping monitors a constant backdrop. "Emma's one of our best," Jane said, her voice thick with admiration. "She smiles through it all, but that walk's got to be killing her. I'll rally the staff, whatever you're planning, we're in." Jane spread the word, and soon nurses passed a donation jar in the break room, doctors offered rides, and even the cafeteria staff chipped in with meal vouchers, their small acts piling into a mountain of goodwill. As the support grew, David realized this was more than fixing a car or buying shoes. It was about showing Emma she was part of a community, that her struggle hadn't gone unseen. But her polite refusals during their brief encounters hinted at a deep-rooted pride, a strength forged through years of fending for herself and her children. He knew he'd need to approach her carefully, to honor the independence she'd fought so hard to maintain. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over Willow Creek, David drove to Emma Street. He parked a block away, not wanting to alarm her, and walked to her cottage. She was on the porch, sitting in a wicker chair that creaked under her weight, watching Ethan and Lily chase fireflies in the yard. Their laughter floated through the air, a melody of innocence that softened the edges of the day. "Evening, Emma," David called softly, stepping into the porch light's faint circle. "Mind if we talk for a minute?" Emma looked up, surprise flickering across her face, but she gestured to the chair beside her. "Officer Lawson? Is everything okay?" "Call me David," he said, settling into the seat, the wicker groaning slightly. "Everything's fine. I've just noticed you walking every day. 15 miles, there and back. That's no small thing, and I'm worried, that's all." Emma's smile tightened, her hands folding in her lap as she glanced at her children. "I appreciate that, but I'm managing. It's what I have to do." David chose his words with care, his voice steady but gentle, like a man calming a skittish horse. "I grew up with a single mom, Emma. She worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table, and I saw how heavy that was. But sometimes, neighbors stepped in, a ride here, a meal there. It didn't make her less strong. It let her focus on us, her kids. You're carrying so much, and I think there are folks in town who'd want to help, not because they think you're weak, but because they see how much you're doing for your family." Emma's gaze drifted to Ethan and Lily, their silhouettes dancing in the twilight as fireflies blinked around them. "It's all for them," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Their dad left 3 years ago. Packed a bag, walked out in the middle of the night, left us with nothing but debt and broken promises. My car broke down last year, and I can't afford to fix it. The bus doesn't run early enough for my shift, and I can't be late. The hospital, it's all we've got to keep us going." David's heart ached, but he kept his tone even, his hands resting calmly on his knees. "I hear you, Emma. And I'm not here to push anything you don't want. I just think there might be practical ways to make things a little easier, nothing big, just neighbors helping neighbors. Would you let me look into some options? For Ethan and Lily's sake?" Emma's eyes glistened, her pride wrestling with exhaustion. She was silent for a long moment, her fingers tracing the frayed hem of her jacket as she watched her children play. Finally, she nodded, her voice soft but resolute. "Okay. For the kids. But I don't want charity, David. I've always taken care of us." "Deal," David said, a smile breaking through his weathered features. "No charity. Just community." For the next 2 weeks, David poured himself into the effort, coordinating with a quiet intensity that surprised even him. Pete Grayson towed Emma's Toyota to his shop and assessed it under the harsh fluorescent lights, a new battery, fresh tires, a rebuilt carburetor, and some bodywork would bring it back to life. He agreed to handle the labor for free if David could cover the parts, which tallied to a few $100s. David nodded, already plotting ways to raise the funds without Emma ever knowing the details. He called Ellen Carter again, confirming Emma's shoe size with Jane's discreet help. She'd peeked at Emma's sneakers during a shift. Ellen delivered a pair of sturdy walking shoes with thick soles and arch support, perfect for long hours on concrete floors. Mr. Thompson at the grocery store upped his offer to a month's worth of food, including Ethan's favorite cereal and Lily's beloved apples, which he stacked in a crate with a grin. Mrs. Margaret Ellis, a retired teacher with a passion for education and a sharp wit, volunteered to tutor Ethan in math and Lily in reading, her eyes twinkling as she spoke of their potential. Even the local bank manager, Mr. Patel, got involved, setting up a transparent fund to track donations and ensure every penny went to Emma's needs, his meticulous nature a perfect fit for the task. Word of the effort spread through Willow Creek like wildfire, carried on whispers and nods. At Clara's bakery, morning regulars murmured over coffee and cinnamon rolls about the woman who walked 15 miles for her kids, their voices thick with awe and respect. The hospital's donation jar overflowed, nurses slipping in 5s and 10s between shifts, their scrubs rustling as they passed it around. The town's annual spring fair committee voted to donate half its proceeds to the cause, a decision cheered at the town hall meeting under the flickering fluorescent lights. David was stunned by the response, his chest tightening with pride at the town's heart. People who'd never met Emma were moved by her story, eager to contribute to her quiet heroism. David kept Emma in the dark, wanting the final reveal to be a moment of joy, not overwhelm. He checked in with her one evening, finding her on the porch knitting a scarf for Lily, the yarn a soft purple she'd scavenged from a thrift store bin. "Just wanted to update you," he said, leaning against the railing, the wood cool under his hands. "We're making progress on some ideas, nothing final yet, but it's coming together." Emma's eyes searched his, a mix of gratitude and unease flickering in their depths. "Thank you, David. It's hard to let people in. I've been on my own so long, I forgot what it's like to have help." "You're not alone anymore," David said gently, his voice firm with conviction. "You'll see soon enough." The big day arrived on a crisp Saturday morning in May, the sky a brilliant blue streaked with wispy clouds, the air alive with the scent of blooming lilacs. David arranged for Jane to drive Emma, Ethan, and Lily to Pete's auto shop under the pretense of discussing her car's repairs. As they pulled into the lot, gravel crunching under the tires, Emma's brow furrowed, sensing something amiss. "David, what's going on?" she asked, stepping out of Jane's beat-up hatchback, her hands twisting nervously. "I thought we were just talking about the car." David grinned, his eyes twinkling with anticipation, a rare lightness in his usually serious demeanor. "There's been a bit of a change of plans, Emma. You ready for a surprise?" Ethan and Lily bounced with excitement, their faces alight with curiosity. "Is it a good surprise, Mom?" Lily asked, tugging at Emma's sleeve, her curls bouncing with each hop. Emma managed a hesitant smile, her heart pounding in her chest. "I hope so, sweetie." David nodded to Pete, who stood by the garage door, a wrench in hand and a rare, crooked smile on his weathered face. With a press of a button, the door rumbled upward, revealing a sight that stole Emma's breath. There, gleaming under the fluorescent lights of the shop, was her Toyota sedan, no longer a rusted shell but a reborn beauty, repainted a deep forest green, with new tires, a polished chrome bumper, and a booster seat for Lily nestled in the back. The shop's concrete floor was crowded with people, Jane and other hospital staff in scrubs, David's fellow officers in crisp uniforms, Ellen, Mr. Thompson, Mrs. Ellis, and dozens of townsfolk, some Emma recognized from her walks, many she didn't. They held handmade signs crafted from poster board and markers, "We're with you, Emma, you're never alone," and "No one walks 15 miles alone in Willow Creek." Emma's hands flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks as she stood frozen, her breath catching in her throat. Ethan and Lily darted forward, circling the car with wide-eyed wonder, their voices overlapping in delight. "Mom, it's our car!" Ethan shouted, running his hand along the hood. "It's so shiny." Lily squealed, pressing her nose to the window to peer inside. David stepped beside Emma, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder, his touch steadying her trembling frame. "This is your community, Emma," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "They heard about you, your strength, your love for your kids, and they wanted to help. This is what Willow Creek does for its own." Pete approached, holding out a set of keys that glinted in the light, his gruff voice softening as he spoke. She's good as new, Emma. New battery, new tires, engines purring like a kitten. She'll get you where you need to go for years." His eyes, usually hard, carried a flicker of pride in his work. One by one, the crowd came forward with their gifts, their voices a chorus of support. Ellen presented the walking shoes, their soles thick and supportive, a practical lifeline for Emma's long shifts. "For your feet, just in case," she said with a wink, her silver hair catching the light. Mr. Thompson handed over a stack of grocery gift cards, enough for a month's meals, his round face beaming. "Plenty of apples for Lily," he added, chuckling. Mrs. Ellis offered tutoring sessions, her warm eyes crinkling at the corners. "Ethan's got a mind for machines, and Lily's stories, oh, I can't wait to hear them." Mr. Patel, the bank manager, introduced himself, his suit crisp despite the casual setting, offering to help Emma set up a savings plan. "No pressure," he said, his tone calm, "but I'd like to help you build something for the future." Emma stood speechless, her hands trembling as she clutched the keys, the cold metal grounding her in the moment. The weight of it all pressed against her chest, gratitude, disbelief, and a flicker of fear that this was too much, too good to last. Lily tugged at her hand, her brown eyes wide with wonder. "Mom, it's like a big family, right?" Ethan nodded beside her, his usual seriousness replaced by a grin that stretched ear to ear. "Yeah, Mom. They're all here for us." Emma laughed through her tears, the sound breaking free like a dam bursting, raw and joyous. She knelt, pulling Ethan and Lily into a fierce hug, their warmth anchoring her in the whirlwind of emotion. Rising, she faced the crowd, her voice shaky but growing stronger with each word, cutting through the hum of voices around her. "I don't know how to thank you all," she began, wiping her eyes with the sleeve of her jacket. "For so long, I thought I had to do this alone, put one foot in front of the other, keep going no matter what. I forgot what it meant to be part of a community. You haven't just given us a car or shoes or food. You've given us hope, a reminder that we're not alone. I promise you, I'll find a way to pay this forward, somehow, some way." The garage erupted in applause, the sound echoing off the concrete walls like a heartbeat, reverberating through the space. Chief Rodriguez stepped forward, his usually stern face softened by emotion, his gray mustache twitching as he spoke. "Emma, this isn't a one-time thing. Willow Creek is here for you and your kids, today and every day moving forward. You're family now." As the crowd mingled, offering hugs and words of encouragement, Emma stood with Ethan and Lily, the keys still clutched in her hand, their sharp edges pressing into her palm. She looked at the car, at the signs, at the faces around her, some familiar from her daily walks, many new, and felt a shift deep within her core. For the first time in years, the road ahead didn't feel so solitary, so insurmountable. The moment at Pete's shop marked a turning point, not just for Emma but for the entire fabric of Willow Creek. The car changed everything. Emma's commute shrank to a 20-minute drive, freeing up hours she could spend with Ethan and Lily. Evenings became a ritual of connection, helping Ethan solder wires on his latest gadget, reading Lily's tales of knights and dragons, or simply sitting together on the porch, watching the stars emerge in the velvet sky. The cottage, once a fortress of quiet endurance, hummed with laughter and possibility, its creaky walls seeming to stand a little straighter. But Emma didn't want to stop at receiving kindness. The outpouring of support had cracked open her guarded heart, and she felt a burning need to give back, to ensure others felt the same embrace she'd received. When David approached her a week later about joining a new initiative called Together We Thrive, a program to connect struggling families with resources, Emma didn't hesitate. "I'm in," she said, her voice firm, her eyes bright with purpose. "I know what it's like to feel alone, to think you've got no one. I want to help others find their way out of that." Together We Thrive launched at the Willow Creek Community Center, a brick building with chipped paint and a sagging roof, but a warm soul that pulsed with the town spirit. Potlucks and bingo nights had long filled its halls, but now it hosted something new. Emma became a volunteer, sharing her story at the program's first meeting. The room was packed, parents with tired eyes, seniors leaning on canes, even a few teenagers drawn by the buzz. Emma stood at the front, her hands steady despite the butterflies fluttering in her stomach, her voice cutting through the murmur of the crowd. 2 months ago, I was walking 15 miles a day to keep my kids fed, she began, her words clear and unadorned. I thought asking for help meant I'd failed them. But this town showed me it's not weakness, it's strength. It's what lets us lift each other up. If you're struggling, don't hide it. Let us help. Her words struck a chord, resonating like a bell in the quiet room. Hands shot up, voices spilled out stories, a father laid off from the mill, a grandmother raising grandkids on a fixed income, a young couple drowning in medical debt from a premature baby's care. Emma listened, her heart swelling with a purpose she hadn't known she craved. She wasn't just a janitor or a mother anymore. She was a bridge, a lifeline, connecting pain to hope. One of her first acts was helping Sarah Jensen, a 29-year-old mother whose husband had walked out, leaving her with no job and a toddler, Owen, to feed. Sarah came to the community center one rainy afternoon, her eyes hollow, her son clinging to her leg as she whispered to Emma, "I've got nothing left. We're sleeping on my sister's floor, but she's got her own troubles." Emma sat with her on a sagging couch in the center's lounge, offering a cup of lukewarm coffee and a listening ear. She saw herself in Sarah, the fear, the pride, the fierce love for her child that refused to break. Emma sprang into action with a quiet ferocity. She connected Sarah with a temporary housing program run by the town's church, securing a small apartment above the hardware store for 3 months. She called Clara Benson, who offered Sarah a part-time job at the bakery, rolling dough and frosting pastries in the early mornings. For childcare, Emma tapped Mrs. Ellis, who agreed to watch Owen during Sarah's shifts, her gentle hands guiding him through picture books and blocks. "You're not alone," Emma told Sarah, squeezing her hand as they stood outside the apartment, the key glinting in Sarah's trembling fingers. "We've got you, and we'll keep going until you're steady again." Sarah's transformation was swift and remarkable. Within a month, she was smiling again, her laughter ringing out as she served coffee and scones at the bakery, Owen toddling behind her with a crumb-streaked grin. She joined Together We Thrive, eager to help others as she'd been helped, her voice steady as she shared her story at the next meeting. "Emma gave me my life back," she told the crowd, her eyes shining. "I want to do that for someone else." Emma shook her head, a modest smile tugging at her lips. "You did the hard part, Sarah. I just pointed the way." Emma's involvement deepened, her energy a quiet force that rippled through the program. She proposed weekly workshops at the town library, a cozy building with stained glass windows and shelves groaning under the weight of books. There, she taught single parents about budgeting, job hunting, and resilience, drawing from her own hard-won lessons, how to stretch a dollar, how to ask for help without shame. Her honesty, admitting her fear of failure, her struggle with pride, resonated deeply, cutting through the guarded silence of her audience. Parents began meeting outside the workshops, forming a support group they dubbed The Anchor, a nod to the stability they'd found together. They swapped recipes, shared hand-me-downs for growing kids, and celebrated small victories, a new job, a paid-off bill, a child's first day in school. Ethan and Lily, too, were transformed by their mother's journey, their young lives blooming in the wake of her courage. Ethan, inspired by Emma's tenacity, started a mechanics club at school, teaching younger kids to build simple machines from scavenged parts, wind-up cars, battery-powered fans. His quiet confidence grew as he saw his classmates light up with curiosity, their questions echoing his own dreams of invention, his hands steady as he guided them through each project. Lily, with her boundless imagination, began writing short stories, which she read to patients at Mercy General during volunteer visits organized by Jane. One tale, about a brave girl who walked across a kingdom to save her family, brought tears to the nurse's eyes, their whispers filling the ward. "That's your mom, isn't it?" Jane murmured, ruffling Lily's curls as she sat on a stool by a patient's bed. Lily just grinned, her cheeks pink with pride, her small voice carrying through the room. David Lawson's life shifted as well, his perspective widening beyond the confines of his patrol car. Once a man of routine, checking speeders, filing reports, breaking up the occasional bar fight, he now saw his badge as a tool for building bridges, for mending what was broken. Emma's story had opened his eyes to the silent struggles all around him, the ones that didn't make it into police logs or town gossip. He vowed to do more, to be more than just a uniform. He partnered with the community center to launch a mentorship program for at-risk youth, inspired by Ethan's intellect and Lily's creativity, his office cluttered with flyers and sign-up sheets. He trained his fellow officers to look beyond crime, to notice signs of hardship, a child in worn-out shoes, a parent skipping meals to feed their kids. "Policing isn't just about laws," he told Maria Sanchez over coffee at the station, the steam curling between them. "It's about people, about making sure no one falls through the cracks like Emma almost did." Together We Thrive grew beyond anyone's expectations, its roots sinking deep into Willow Creek soil. A nearby city awarded the program a $5,000 grant, a windfall that enabled it to offer scholarships for trade schools and community college courses. Sarah enrolled in a baking certification program, her dream of opening her own pastry shop taking shape with every lesson, her hands kneading dough with newfound purpose. The Miller family, whose daughter faced a chronic illness, received help with medical bills, with volunteers organizing meal trains and yard work to ease their burden, their gratitude spilling over in tearful hugs. A single father, Tom Reynolds, found a welding apprenticeship through the program, his confidence restored after months of unemployment, his hands steady as he struck an arc for the first time. Willow Creek itself began to glow with a new spirit, its pulse quickening with each act of kindness. Clara's Bakery started a Pay It Forward board, where customers covered meals for those in need, no questions asked, the chalkboard filling with names and notes of thanks. The library hosted free tutoring nights, with Mrs. Ellis and other retirees guiding students through fractions and essays, their voices patient and firm. The spring fair added a Unity Day, its proceeds funding Together We Thrive, the air thick with the scent of cotton candy and the sound of laughter. Neighbors greeted each other with warmth, their eyes keener to the needs around them, offering a ride to the store, sharing a garden's harvest, or simply stopping to listen over a fence. One evening, about a year after the garage surprise, Emma called David to the community center, her voice bright with urgency over the phone. "There's someone you need to meet," she said, her excitement palpable. David arrived to find Emma standing with a young woman named Rachel Torres, her face etched with worry, her hands wringing a frayed scarf. "Rachel's like I was," Emma explained, her hand resting lightly on Rachel's shoulder as they stood in the center's lobby, the hum of a bingo game drifting from the next room. Lost her job at the diner, no car, walking miles to interviews, trying to keep her 2 kids fed and clothed. Rachel nodded, her voice barely audible, her eyes darting to the floor. I thought I'd hit bottom. Didn't know where to turn. Emma had already crafted a plan, her mind sharp with the instincts of someone who'd walked the same path: rent assistance for 2 months from the church fund, a cashier job at Mr. Thompson's grocery store starting the next week, and a bike from the community center's donation pile until a car could be secured. David listened, then jumped in, his voice steady as he made calls from his cruiser parked outside. He reached Ellen for a pair of shoes, size 8, right? And Pete for a used vehicle, anything reliable, doesn't need to be fancy. By the end of the week, Pete delivered, a refurbished hatchback, donated by a local who'd heard Rachel's story through the grapevine, its paint chipped but its engine humming smoothly. When Rachel took the keys, tears streamed down her face, her voice cracking as she spoke. I thought I'd failed my boys, she said, her hands shaking. Emma hugged her tightly, her embrace fierce and unwavering. You're not failing. You're starting over, and we're right here with you. Rachel's gratitude fueled her own contribution, a mirror of Emma's journey. She joined Together We Thrive, volunteering at the center's food pantry, her boys trailing behind with shy smiles as they handed out canned goods. Her story, like Sarah's, became a thread in the program's growing tapestry, each act of kindness weaving the town closer together, stitch by stitch. Emma's influence deepened, her presence a quiet force that reshaped Willow Creek's heart. She launched a storytelling night for children, held monthly in the community center's auditorium, where Lily's tales of brave heroes sparked creativity in her peers. Kids wrote their own stories, some published in a local newsletter printed on the center's ancient press, their pride palpable as parents clapped and cheered. Ethan's Mechanics Club expanded, winning a county grant for tools and parts, a toolbox brimming with wrenches and screws now tucked under his arm. He led workshops in the school gym, teaching kids to build simple circuits, his voice steady with authority as he explained voltage and resistance, his dream of engineering inching closer. David, meanwhile, pushed for broader change, his vision stretching beyond the town's borders. He launched Neighbor's Eye, a program not for crime but for kindness, training residents to spot and support those in need, a widow struggling with bills, a teen skipping school to work, a family stretching one meal into 3. Workshops at the fire station drew crowds, with David sharing Emma's story as a call to action, his voice firm under the station's tin roof. One person's struggle is our chance to show what Willow Creek stands for, he'd say, his hands gesturing to the rows of folding chairs filled with nodding faces. 2 years after David first saw Emma walking in the rain, Willow Creek was unrecognizable, not in its streets or shops, but in its soul. The road where Emma once trudged alone now buzzed with life, neighbors chatting on porches, kids biking to the park, signs of a community woven tight with care. Together We Thrive had grown into a regional model, with nearby towns sending delegates to learn from its success, their notebooks scribbled with ideas. The center hired a coordinator, freeing Emma to focus on outreach, her workshops now drawing parents from across the county, their voices eager as they shared their own tales of struggle and triumph. One crisp autumn evening, the community center hosted the 2nd anniversary of Together We Thrive. The auditorium overflowed, folding chairs spilling into the hallway, the air thick with the scent of potluck dishes, casseroles, pies, and Clara's famous rolls. Emma took the stage, her presence commanding yet warm, a far cry from the weary woman who once walked in silence, her sneakers now retired to a shelf in her closet. Ethan and Lily sat in the front row, their faces beaming with pride, Ethan's hands fidgeting with a small motor, Lily clutching a notebook of stories. David stood at the back, his arms crossed, a quiet smile tugging at his lips as he watched the scene unfold. Emma's voice carried over the crowd, steady and clear, cutting through the hum of anticipation. 2 years ago, I walked 15 miles a day, thinking I had to carry it all alone, she began, her words ringing with conviction. I thought strength meant never asking for help, never letting anyone see the cracks. But you, Willow Creek, showed me something greater. You showed me that together, we're unstoppable. You didn't just give me a car or a hand up. You gave me a family, a purpose beyond myself. This program, this town, it's not my story anymore. It's ours. The room erupted in cheers, the sound swelling like a tide, shaking the old walls. Lily ran on stage, handing Emma a drawing, a woman walking a golden road, surrounded by friends, their hands linked under a starry sky dotted with fireflies. "That's you, Mom," she whispered, loud enough for the front rows to hear, her voice bright with love. Laughter rippled through the crowd, followed by applause that thundered on. Ethan joined them, his lanky frame towering over Lily, and Emma pulled them both close, tears glistening in her eyes as she held them tight. As the celebration continued, with music from a local band and kids darting between tables laden with food, David slipped outside to the parking lot, needing a moment to breathe. The night was clear, stars pricking the velvet sky, the air cool against his skin. He thought of that rainy morning when he'd first followed Emma, his curiosity sparking a chain of events he couldn't have foreseen. He'd asked a simple question, "Why does she walk?" and found an answer that reshaped a town, a question that had peeled back layers of silence to reveal a community ready to stand as one. Maria Sanchez joined him, her uniform crisp despite the late hour, a cup of punch in her hand. "You did good, Lawson," she said, nudging his shoulder with a grin. "Look at this place. It's alive because of you." David shook his head, his gaze fixed on the stars. "Not me. Emma. She's the one who kept going, who showed us what strength looks like. I just paid attention." Maria smiled, sipping her drink. "Maybe. But paying attention's where it starts. You lit the match." Years passed, and Willow Creek's heart only grew stronger, its spirit a living testament to Emma's journey. Her story became a cornerstone of the town's identity, told at town meetings and school assemblies, a reminder that one person's courage could ignite a movement that endured. Ethan graduated high school with honors, earning a scholarship to study mechanical engineering at a state university, his childhood gadgets now relics on a shelf, his future bright with promise. Lily, a teenager with a flair for words, published her first children's book, The Walker's Light, dedicated to Mom, who taught me to keep going, its pages filled with tales of bravery and friendship that lined library shelves across the region. Emma never stopped giving back, her life a cycle of receiving and returning kindness. She became a full-time coordinator for Together We Thrive, traveling to neighboring towns to share its model, workshops, scholarships, community networks that lifted families from despair to dignity. Her talks drew crowds, her story a beacon for those lost in their own shadows, her voice steady as she spoke of blisters and hope. She mentored dozens like Sarah and Rachel, watching them bloom, Sarah's pastry shop, Jensen's Sweets, a downtown staple with lines out the door, Rachel's promotion to store supervisor, her boys thriving in school with new backpacks slung over their shoulders. David retired from the force at 54, his hair graying at the temples, his spirit undimmed by the years. He took up teaching at the community center, training new generations in Neighbor's Eye, his lessons rooted in Emma's example: notice, care, act. His own children, now grown and scattered across the state, called him weekly, teasing that he'd saved a town single-handedly. "Just helped it find its heart," he'd reply, his chuckle warm over the line. Willow Creek became a model for rural communities nationwide, its story featured in a regional magazine, The Town That Walked Together, its pages filled with photos of smiling faces and bustling streets. Together We Thrive expanded, with chapters in 5 counties, its grants funding everything from childcare to vocational training, its impact measured in lives rebuilt. The town itself remained a place of warmth, where strangers were greeted like kin, where no one walked alone, figuratively or literally. Emma, now in her late 40s, stood one evening on her porch, the cottage freshly painted a soft yellow thanks to a volunteer crew from the center, its roof patched and its windows sealed tight. Ethan was home from college for the weekend, tinkering with a drone he'd built, his laughter mingling with the hum of its blades. Lily curled beside him, reading her latest manuscript aloud, her voice bright with the cadence of a born storyteller. The stars above glittered, a map of dreams fulfilled, their light casting a glow over the yard where fireflies danced. Emma thought of her 15 miles, the blisters, the rain-soaked nights, the mornings when her legs screamed but her heart refused to yield. They'd led her here, to a family whole, a town united, a legacy of love that stretched beyond her wildest hopes. She remembered David's words from years ago, neighbors helping neighbors. He'd seen her when she felt invisible, sparking a ripple that became a wave, a single act of noticing that had woven a tapestry of care. She smiled, her heart full, the keys to her Toyota, still running strong, jingling in her pocket as she leaned against the railing. The road she'd walked was long, but it had carried her to a place she'd never dared dream, a home, not just for her and her children, but for all who needed it, a beacon of light born from the steps she'd taken alone, now shared by a community that walked as one.